right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of React Wednesdays. Should be a fun Dan-filled episode here today. We've got a fun group of guys here. You've got Dan Wilson. Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dan Wilson. I work with Digital Primates. We do enterprise React consulting. We also curate the enterprise React newsletter. So if that's your kind of thing, Google it. We don't sell your email. We don't spam, and it's curated by developers for developers.
We've also got Dan Skaggs.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Dan Skaggs. I'm in software engineering leadership for a multinational large media company, and that's about all I can really say about it. I've been on here a couple times, so thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no problem. And our third Dan of the day, we got Dan DiGangi, right? I got that right this time? Okay.
Yes, yeah, nailed it. So my name is Dan DiGangi. I am a engineering manager at Document here in Chicago. I lead the user experience transformation team. And I'm also one of the co-organizers of React Loop, which is Chicago's only React conference.
Awesome. And we also have Rob, Dan. That's amazing. Ocel?
10 points, sir.
Ocel, yeah.
Ocel, okay.
Yeah, my name is Rob Ocel. I'm an architect and engineering lead at This.Labs, which is a primarily front-end, primarily JavaScript software consultancy.
Awesome. And so today we're going to talk about basically how to make remote work suck a little less. I think all of us have differing levels of experience with remote work. Some of us have done it for a while. Some of us are new to it. So we just kind of want to chat about it just because I feel like this was a popular topic when COVID first hit and people were experiencing this for the first time. But we're a few months into a lot of people doing this. So I sort of wanted to come back to this topic and chat about it, talk about sort of our unique experiences, tips and tricks and such. I think we're going to start by just sharing some of our workstations and each go through some of the things that we like, we don't like, any tips and recommendations that we have. And if you have any questions in the chat, feel free to chime in at any time. I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so we can bring those up as well. Sound good?
Sure.
All right. So let's start. Who wants to go first? Do we have any volunteers?
I'll do it.
All right. Perfect. So let's add my screen back in. There we go. So we're definitely going to make fun of everything you got going on in here, Dan. So okay, talk us through it.
This is in stand-up mode. So I first started working from home in 2007, and I thought I could work from the couch, which is not a good idea. So if you're doing that right now, stop it. Your chiropractor thanks you. I realized that after not having a TV for a year, there was this great show on called The Deadliest Catch. So I thought I could not only work from the couch, but catch up on all this great TV that I missed. I was sorely mistaken, both sore back and also no productivity. So I carved out a room in my house and made an office out of it. And for about 10 years, I ran a consultancy. So for me, productivity was something I would invest my own money in. And you have what I consider to be the state of the art in this house for home offices. The desk will raise and lower as you wish. I find that this desk is from autonomous AI, and the ability to stand for a part of the day, but not the entire day, really kind of suits my interests. You know, standing up all day is a bit much. Sitting down drives me crazy. And so I can kind of pick. You'll notice on the ground, I've got an anti-fatigue mat, and then I've got some house shoes off to the right. Those shoes have never been outside. They're only used in this office, and man, are they comfortable. So I can stand while I'm doing something that I want to be a bit more kinetic about, or sit if I need to really, really drill in and focus. On top of the desk, I've got an ergonomic keyboard, which you can't see. Fun fact, I'm not able to type on straight keyboards. I'm also not able to type on ergonomic keyboards, but I suck less at it, so I go with those. And then I have this humongous 34-inch monitor on top of the desk that will actually split itself up into two regions. So it's like two monitors without being two monitors.
Yeah, it actually, so if I bring up mine too, just because it seems relevant here, because I've got a fairly similar setup. I've got the adjustable desk. I've had this for a long time, so I can't actually remember who makes this thing. But it's very similar. I might take your idea and grab one of these mats, although I do have carpet, which I think accomplishes some of that. I think I have literally the same keyboard as you too.
You do.
which I can type on straight keyboards, but years ago I had some wrist problems with using the straight keyboards, and I switched to an ergonomic one, and it basically completely cured all of that. So like I highly recommend the ergonomic ones. And at least for me, I don't know, like I was able to find that I could switch back and forth within a few weeks. So now I can go back to a straight keyboard, and it feels weird only for a few seconds, and then I adjust back and forth pretty well.
That's impressive. It usually burns my forearms out.
I'd be curious. I know standing desks are definitely something that's popped up. What do they cost to get into standing desks? If that's something you might be interested in for your desktop or your setup.
Oh, it's a couple $100. I mean, you can go buck wild and crazy and spend as much money as one could possibly spend getting a desk made out of condor wings.
Yeah.
But I'm going to paste in the link here into the chat, and hopefully TJ will push this onward. It's you can get a kit for like $200, or you can get the whole desk for about 300-ish bucks. Me and Skaggs were going to build our own desks until we realized exactly how much work that is, and then decided maybe that wasn't the greatest idea.
Well, and I kind of went halfway and built half of my desk, as you'll see in a bit.
How often does everybody find themselves standing versus sitting if you have that?
For me, it's about 50-50. And it depends on the day. Like some days I don't feel like standing at all, and I don't force myself. Like I don't have for a while, I actually found that at first standing helped me quite a bit, but then I found that I could overdo it that way also. That's kind of why I like the adjustable angle of it. So some days I don't stand at all. Some days I stand most of the day. I just sort of depends on how I feel.
Hey, TJ, pull up that picture of the chair in my office.
Yeah.
That's the other sizable investment I made is I bought an ergonomic chair, and this chair I've had for, it's got to be more than 10, 12, 13 years at this point. I was sitting in like $100 office chair from Staples, and I would find that I would like curl my leg underneath me because I no longer wanted to be sitting down, and I needed some sort of physical stress to make me focus. And it was causing me major back issues, sitting all lopsided. So I found this chair. I wanted an Aeron chair, but I didn't want to spend $1,200. And this was like $600. And this thing is a total tank. I've done nothing to it except replace the cylinder in it once. And boy, that was fun. But it's still rocking hard. And the nice thing is if I do fall into bad ergonomic habits, like curling my leg underneath me, it really hurts a lot. So I don't do it very much.
To follow up on Dan D's question, what I have found for me is that after having an adjustable desk, I'll start getting like antsy if I'm sitting. And so just kind of my body tells me, hey, you've been sitting too long. It's time to stand up. And then after a while of standing up, my knees or ankles and feet will kind of start getting sore or not feeling right. And so that's kind of my cue to sit down again. I wind up going back and forth probably 3 or 4 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the same for me. Yeah, and I think in terms of how much money, I mean, I think mine was probably about I think it was somewhere close to $1,000 for the desk. So it was not cheap, but I'll say now having used it for years, like I don't regret the purchase at all because it was definitely one that was easy to set up because I'm not good at that sort of thing. And like it's been so nice, and really like all the expenses the things I bought for my home setup, I felt were worth the money 100%, but it kind of depends on how much you're going to use it. Like I've also been working remote for 8 years or something like that at this point. So I've gotten a lot of value out of all of those upgrades. So it becomes a little bit of a cost benefit analysis if you're not using it super often. With that, Dan, we already started, Dan Skaggs. We already started a little bit with your setup. So maybe you could walk us through what you've got going on.
Yeah. So Wilson and I have been friends for a lot more years than either of us will admit to. And you'll notice that I also have the same autonomous AI desk. He has his on my recommendation. I have some things on his recommendation. I have the same chair that he mentioned on his recommendation. We use the same mics. So some of the same equipment. When we find a good piece of kit, we share that back and forth. And I've got the same 34-inch monitor in the middle. My philosophy though is you can never have too many pixels.
As one can see from the picture.
Yeah.
Right. In this photo, like I made all of the family members get together and get dressed up for a family picture. My office issues me a MacBook Pro, and my daily driver is a custom Windows machine that I built running the 3 screens and the VR headset, which you can't see. The biggest thing for me, and we touched on the desk, but that's probably my best piece of kit for my well-being, that and the chair. I'm still working on trying to figure out some better, more efficient and easy to use lighting as I'm getting into more streaming and doing some things. And my son and I have been streaming some video games and stuff and making some video tutorials. So lighting is a little bit subpar at the moment, but we're working on it. The microphone, Dan is hanging in front of his screen too. I've gotten so many, like at SVP and EVP levels of my company I've been in meetings with, and they all say, like, where can I get that mic? It sounds great. So that's been an absolute wonderful investment for good quality audio. From the work at home thing, we're all doing all these meetings and stuff now. A good quality camera, if you can find one these days, because they've been sold out for months, and a good quality audio mic coupled with good fast internet. Those are the 3 kind of pieces for me that really make the work at home thing more seamless than it would be otherwise if you're choppy or if your audio sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Gotta say, I'm impressed with your wire management, because like if you compare that to mine here, where I've got like wires sort of bunched up and all over the place, like you've got way more stuff here. And either like you hid them from the
amateur
picture
radio gear there that's got the big thick coaxes and whatever.
Can you make that bigger, TJ? It's a little kind of pinched.
Yeah, kind of blow it up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps. Is that big?
Will it consume more of the screen?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Is that a receiver? Too?
What's that?
Is that a receiver next to the laptop, or what am I seeing there? That black box.
The one on the right, on the left, is a high frequency amateur radio that is worldwide capable. I can talk pretty well all over the world with that. The one on the left, the one on the right hand side of the photo is a local area ham radio. Talking about keyboards, I'm a real keyboard snob. I only use mechanicals these days, and
clackety clack.
Yeah, that's a Nixius with I think it has brown switches in it. I'll have to go back and look, but I liked it so well that I bought a second one and I leave it in my office in our Times Square building. And I
like this comment.
That's my wife chiming in. She's lived with me a lot of years and has seen me spend a lot of hours tying up cable management and bits. So
something to mention about these autonomous desks is they're very powerful and strong and sturdy, as evidenced by the 900 pounds of monitors on his desk.
Yeah, right. The desktops in my setup were unfinished things I got at IKEA and just put some poly on. They've lasted pretty well. I think I've been in this setup for about 4 years now, which is, again, if you ask my wife, I'm one of those people that likes to rearrange things a lot. So having a setup that's been about the same for 4 years is quite the length of time for me.
I'll say too, one thing I like, I see you've got, I don't know what arm that is, but just like having like a mic arm, I found is super useful, just because if you get a nicer microphone, it sucks to like give it a big spot on your desk or have to fidget with it all the time, and just being able to like tuck it away. Cause I take mine and I toss it, it fits in like back here.
Yep.
Quite nicely. It's just super convenient. And then you don't have to deal with headsets or packing something up every time you want to jump on a call or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
One last comment, and then I'll shut up and let somebody else talk. I started my work at home journey in about April of 2001, before it was really cool, if you know the country song.
Well, you've had many years to refine the process.
I've had several different setups too, and this one is probably the one I've been on the longest.
Weren't you on like a tall chair for a while?
Yeah, I had a non-moving standing desk that I dipped my toe into the water for a while, and I wound up putting an extended ultra tall cylinder on that same chair. So because I had bought the chair and I didn't want to waste my $600 investment, so I replaced the cylinder and did that until I got the one that was adjustable.
Yeah, I had a basically like almost like a countertop that I worked from, and then I would stand at it, and then I had like basically a stool that I would sit at, and that worked okay. But then over time, like
but those are, if you really look into the ergonomics of these things, there's some pretty specific heights that various things are supposed to be, and maybe we can get into that later. But it invariably, unless you're the perfect height yourself, all of the countertops are always the wrong height to be just quite right. So
yeah, you have a series of boxes, right?
Yeah, right.
Like to try to prop
still you're
something
looking
up
down, and your neck is all tweaked because you're looking down at a laptop. It's just suboptimal, to use one of Wilson's phrases.
Yeah, that's a great point to slide in there. It's for those who are not totally comfortable in their home office, is to just try to understand the geometry of your body and how you're asking it to be for prolonged periods of time. Things like where your elbows and your arms sit on the desk make a big difference. Some people have longer torsos with shorter legs. Some have longer legs with shorter torsos. And this affects the correct height for your chair. And if you get this stuff right, you'll be more focused and happier at the end of the day and not as tired. And if you get it wrong, taken to an extreme, you could end up with something like carpal tunnel, and then you're out of the game. You can't participate in this
neck
IT
pain,
thing anymore.
Pain. There's all kinds of ways that can manifest itself. And there's some pretty good guidelines that are an easy Google search away for figuring out where things should sit for your, how to figure out where heights and distances and things like that.
Well, I want to make sure we bring everybody else in, and Dan DiGangi, why don't we bring you in next? Because I think you've got the most impressive view by a lot.
That one's hard. That one's hard to suggest people.
Just buy a building. No. So I'm actually probably kind of the contrarian. So I know everybody loves mechanicals, but I actually love my terrible flat keyboards from Mac. I don't know why. Not like the last gens where there's like no travel, no escape key, but I use all standard Apple stuff. I'm a huge Apple guy. But I recently did underarm with the doubles. So I got LASIK a couple years ago, and my eyesight's still terrible. So you can see how close I keep everything. But kind of going back to your point with ergonomics for your body and stuff, I can even tell you guys right now. So I'm using my iMac right now, and I've got it angled like slightly backwards. My chair is higher than normal. My desk is down here. So you really got to line that stuff up. And like I always I can't even tell you how much the tape measure became essential, and like looking at all those dimensions. But I would say to double down on your point. So I actually am the guy that spent way too much money on the chair. So I have a Steel Series. I think it was like $1,300, but it is a phenomenal chair. Super comfy. I sit in my chair way too often. And it's funny. The reason I asked about the standing desk is because I don't have one, the way that I get around that is I pace around like a dummy when I'm thinking through stuff. So that's my off and on all day, is pacing through my thoughts as I'm trying to figure things out. I would say the only other thing that really comes to mind is going to the monitors one more time. So I used to think it was only an engineer thing, but now that I'm a manager, so I don't code as much, but lots of pixels, as many as you can, and anything in the realm of like screen management software, I find really useful. So I use one called Moom, and being able to get my Windows position when I have so many things open has really helped. So and then you can't see it exactly, but I have the arm and they don't move. They stay where they're at. The line isn't annoying or anything in the middle, but yeah. And then I guess, like you said, you can't just get the view, but I like the open windows and the lights. Having sunlight is an amazing thing. Don't live in the dark. If you're in an office, like get light in there. I can't suggest that highly enough.
I guess you have to pace.
The glare worries me. So my wife won't even come down here because she said it's the dungeon.
I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
Here, as you can tell. In fact, when I used to work in an office, my very first move on day one was to stand on my desk and unscrew the light bulbs on top of my head. And then the maintenance guys would come by a couple times until they figured out that under no scenarios is this light actually going to work as long as I'm here.
Yeah, I've gotten in trouble for doing that a few times too.
Actually, I do have one other suggestion on that same note. So if you have an iPhone, I know the others devices, I don't know where, but night shift mode, where it turns your colors to a more orange color. So I always run that, not just at nighttime when I'm trying to cool my brain down, but definitely look at getting one of those softwares on your computer. I can't advise it enough, taking the stress off your eyes by reducing blue light.
Yeah, this Dell monitor I've got has a mode for that, and I turned it on when I switched jobs recently about 6 months ago, and Yeah, I don't do any design work where I have to match colors. So I think it's actually pretty great. And when I switch to another computer that's like puts out a proper white, it's almost a little jarring. It's a bit much.
What did you say the software was for window management that you use?
So the one that I'm using right now, Moom, Moom. It's not a free one, but I found it to work really well, because if you have Mac and you use the built-in one, it takes you to full screen mode, which is really obnoxious. Whereas this actually manages like putting them in place, do the hotkeys and all that. So one I have right now. There's another free one called Spectacle. Again, these are for Mac, but Spectacle is another great alternative that is free.
Yeah, I use one called Divi, so I could do the same thing. So like this sort of thing. And I think that actually it's one of the things I miss from Windows is Windows has a lot of this built in, and it works quite well. And on the Mac, you typically have to get something. And I'll just plus one that like even beyond the specific software, just having something to like quickly move things around is really, really nice.
Yeah. And if you can't tell, I need to get together with Dan Skaggs, because I am terrible at wire management, and it's a big pet peeve with me being such a busy person. I'm terrible at doing it.
Count as bad. Yeah, we're gonna have to.
I've got thousands of ideas to help you out there, buddy.
I realized I should have listened to my dad when he tried to teach me this stuff.
So I want to make sure I bring Rob into the conversation as well. So Rob, you want to talk us through your setup here?
Right. So everybody else was showing immaculate OCD style desks, cable management. I'm going to show you what it means to bring remote work to the life you already live. So this was my gamer desk with my Windows machine before it was a remote office. I've been in a remote office longer than COVID, but not that long, about 2 years. So I'm still learning what works best for me, but let me show you some of the things that work best. So I have a blanket on my chair, because even though I can theoretically control the thermostat, the vent is right here. So we are rocking the blanket to make sure that we've got a good temperature going all throughout the body. We have the second chair that has the nice meeting shirt, I call it. So if you only have only one nice meeting in a day, you can have the good shirt on, rock what I call the work mullet, right? Business on top, party underneath. So that's the dog's chair to the furthest right, the flowery one. So you don't have to kick your pets out. If pets can be huge de-stressors. It's great to be able to like reach over, pet the dog or what have you, be bothered by the cat. They're also great guests on calls. I'm sure everybody's experienced that now if you're doing remote work. The two chairs thing I'll explain. So the central chair is like my gaming chair. It's my lounging chair. It's my hang out with my 3-year-old chair. It's my thinking chair. Like it's big, it's cushiony, it has a lot of space, big, broad arms. I bought this other chair, which has it's the one I'm in right now. It has like a good high back, which I need for myself. I need to have something to rest my head against. But the narrow arms bother me sometimes. So what I do is I actually have the two chairs and I decide, am I on a work heavy day or a meeting heavy day? And if I'm in a meeting heavy day, I get the upright chair. And if it's a work heavy day, then I get the cushiony chair and I recline it back and I kick my feet up on one of the other two chairs and I go like full lounge mode. And that is what works best for me. And I think that's the big key here is you got to find what works best for you. And I love being able to get into that mode and just completely tune everything out and code that way.
I'm thinking here, Rob, if you had, I don't know, $2 worth of pool noodles, you could take the skinny armchair and turn it into a masterpiece.
I might give it a shot. I got pool noodles in the garage, so maybe we'll give it a try.
Yeah, we hung one in our garage so our van door wouldn't smash against this brick fireplace. It's they're amazing. You run a rope through it, tie it off on each side, and you've got a bumper.
The thing I will call out is you can barely see it underneath the laptop right now, but it's a dad jokes book. And that's a big part of culture. I was kind of known for it in our company. I end our weekly water cooler meeting with a dad joke. I try to hide it so people don't realize that's what I'm doing each week. And so that's a big part of remote work too, is you got to make sure you're having fun. You got to make sure other people are having fun.
So it looks like there's a monitor behind your laptop. Is that occasionally used?
It is occasionally used. So this is one of my biggest struggles that I'm still working out with my office, which again, this was a gamer's desk before it was a work desk. And so I haven't yet found the right way to position everything. So I have my Windows machine and my Mac machine with both monitors in a position that I like all of them to be. So I end up in this weird situation sometimes where I'll bring the laptop around to the front and then use the two monitors for the Mac. But then I get into this like slide it back, slide it forth thing. So it's one of my biggest to do still in my office, besides behind me, close this off so I have a door so the 3-year-old can't run in. But that's a work in progress. When you have something that isn't originally home office, you make do the best you can, and then you make plans for the future.
Yeah, when I first had this monitor, this large monitor, it had a monitor stand as they do, and I ended up getting a monitor hanging. What do you call those clamp things? I guess. And I got an Amazon one for $50, but just the ability to push the monitor a little bit backwards and get more desk space really helped out a lot. Not only that, but you can also kind of fine tune the height of the monitor, which oddly enough, I guess I'm oddly shaped, but if I sit down, the monitor position I like the best is say X. And then when I stand up, that's not the right position anymore. I've got to change it. And so having this kind of monitor, I don't even know what you call it. Skaggs, you know what these things are.
Yeah, monitor arm.
Yeah, that. So you can sort of fix it when you need to.
And the monitor I have, so it's the same way. It depends on which chair I'm in. I have to change the height of the desk. I also have the rising desk. I don't barely ever stand in it though, but being able to control the height is awesome. So depending on which chair I'm in, I have to move the monitor. And so the monitor actually does slide up and down. It's one of its best features. So depending, I can do the same thing you're talking about. I can either move it way up or way down, tilt it, and all that kind of stuff. So.
And what keyboard do you have there?
This one right now is just a Logitech. It is mechanical. I forget what keys it is. They're not the super clicky keys though. I do have a DOS keyboard over there.
The old
super clicky keys, but since I don't work in an office with people anymore, I don't find it's not as important anymore.
Definitely the Mario light deserves a special mention.
Yeah, right. You got to have knickknacks. You can't see all of my little widgets. I've got a let's see, who do I got here? I've got a Janet from The Good Place. I've got a bunch of toys around here. Not many of them survive. Like I said, I have a 3-year-old, so he comes and steals them all. But it's good to have things that just make it your own. It gets a little boring if you just have a corner of a closet somewhere in your house.
Yeah, I'm not really a stuff in places kind of person because I end up putting too much stuff in too many places. But one of my kids gave me this little heart thing with, and I don't really want it, but I can't possibly not have it. So it sits on my desk.
Since you guys work in software, I feel like you'd appreciate. It's actually hiding right now because of my dog, but I have one of the This Is Fine dogs plush toys. It's massive.
Oh, nice.
So anytime there's a fire at work, I hug it ever so tightly.
Nice.
Well, I know we wanted to talk about workstations a little bit, but we also wanted to talk about just the actual like processes of working from home as well. So does anybody have something like I kind of like approaching this as like tips and tricks, like anything you've learned from your years that you would recommend to others in terms of just like either a workflow or to how to get work as a team best or accomplish things best?
I think most technical people think of themselves as tactical, kind of individual implementers of something. And so they often don't really prioritize the collaboration aspect. Sometimes just get on the phone and talk something out for 5 minutes and you can save 22 or 25 emails that go back and forth. Also, 5 minutes of video will build more trust than 10 days of emails. And so, it's another thing to consider when you're working remotely, that we're humans and we're used to things being in 3D. So you'll have better relationships with folks if they kind of get you, and they'll get you more if they can see you.
So yeah, I think you're reading my mind. So I see that mistake a lot of Slack. Yeah, is like trying to have these elaborate conversations or like answer these questions. It's like just hop on a quick Zoom or whatever you have for 15 minutes, get the info back and forth. Saves a lot of heartache. And like you said, you can build better relationships. One thing I would throw on there that I'm big on is I don't force anybody by any means to put their video on. If someone's not comfortable, I think it's worth saying like, hey, whatever makes you feel the best, you do your thing. I do like, my team does always put it on for our one-on-ones, even if they don't do it in their meetings, but I highly agree with the video as far as seeing people helps quite a bit.
Yeah, for me, I think it really depends on how much meetings or how often you have them, because I think it is kind of nice to get the like personal touch. Like we typically do it for like team meetings, right? So we can see everybody. But if you have a work schedule where you have like a chunk of meetings in the morning, you can get exhausted by just because in a video meeting, you feel the need to like stare at the camera, right? Because you want to tell people that you're paying attention. And after a few minutes, much less like a few hours of doing that, it'll start to really mess with your head. Like you can actually get like headaches from doing it. So I think it's about just striking that balance.
So there's a fix for that, TJ. One of the guys I work with actually recorded himself sitting and watching a meeting and then used it as an animated background for Zoom. It worked pretty well for several weeks before anybody caught on.
So that's the 19th time he's fixed his eyelid. What in the world's going on over there?
Never ending coffee cup.
I like it.
I've got a kind of a pet peeve that I want to mention, that if you're in leadership, don't ever do this, because it stresses your people out, even if you don't realize it. Don't hop on a text, Slack or Teams or whatever you use, and just say, "Got a minute?"
Oh yeah, that definitely means getting
context. Because
Yeah.
invariably, if you say "got a minute" and somebody gets your attention, you're leaving your person for X number of minutes or whatever, worried about what this is about. Just the few extra characters. Got a minute to talk about blah blah blah, and boom.
Yeah, and if it's not urgent, put like not urgent in the message as
Exactly.
well. And if it is urgent, okay, then say this is, I need you right away. Great. But if it's not urgent, like make that clear so you don't have to drop whatever you're doing.
So I had that happen so many times. I had a kind of a somewhat ADD boss for a while, and he would just drop something. Hey, you got a minute to talk? And then he would go away for 45 minutes or so. And then, the whole time is like, either what did I do? What did I screw up? Or, your brain goes to the bad areas, right? When it doesn't have good information. So give your people good information so that they can have some context about what you need them for.
I had a boss who would, his big move was to say, "Can you come here a minute?" And I always felt like I was getting pulled into Dad's room with him holding the belt, like this was just going to be the worst thing ever. And it never was, but I never got past that. And, and I'm guilty of telling people, "Hey, got a minute?" when I really want to ask them something. What I try to remember is that the person on the other end of the line is trying to figure out if they have time or attention to switch to your context. And if you say "got a minute," they're going to think that what you want is pretty exhaustive and they need to have enough time to get to it, when you might just really need 20 seconds. And so if you can kind of fill out what the ask is, people are more able to work it in because they can size what you want from them and fit it in better.
It's also, if you're in engineering and I guess you're not management, right? We have to switch gears constantly, whereas others might not be going through that as often. So you really do throw a wrench at them when you do that to them. And then, right, productivity suffers. You get that terrible butterflies in the stomach. You're in trouble. So yeah, I can't stress enough what you said then there. Throwing that context, or even just something along of like, "Hey, I need to chat on this. Let me know when you have time," or something like that. But it changes it entirely just by having those few extra words, like you said.
I have told my people several times in the past that, if they're in a groove, feel free not to respond to me until they get a natural breaking point. Because having come from engineering, you're right, that context switching of working on this complex thing that I'm trying to build, and all of the bits are loaded into my brain and sorted correctly. And if I look over at Slack and it says, "Hey, got a minute?" whoosh, that's gone. And then it takes a while to put it back in place.
So I know some people advocate a lot for email as a form of asynchronous communication, and that's really a big part of this, right? Because with remote work usually also comes dispersed teams. Yep. So like at this thought, we have people all over the world at all different time zones, because that's what you can do when you have remote work. And so the need for asynchronous communication goes up dramatically. I know some people advocate for email. To be honest, I don't find that to be a great way to collaborate. But Slack is even worse for this, right? Because Slack is that immediate, demanding dopamine hit. You either have to be paying attention to it or you miss the whole conversation. It's also the worst documentation tool in history. I'm guilty of this too, but like a lot of teams fall into that, "Oh, let me do that search in the Slack history for when we talked about that." It's worth investigating. There's a lot of tools out there that do like forum-based or thread-based asynchronous communication so that people can really consume at their own leisure. You should really be reaching for that, "Hey, are you available to talk to me?" thing as like a last effort, right? That's not something you want to reach to all the time, especially with developers, because you're going to pull them out of flow and then wonder why their productivity is so low.
We use threads at DocuSign and Slack. It's the first time I've been at a place that really uses them, and I have found it significantly better. In fact, one of my personal ones, we all got agreed, let's use threads, and all of a sudden the Slack noise got significantly lessened, and you don't have that, right? All the messages before it appear very quickly, and like it's made things so much. I'm very happy that they put threads to use at work.
You know, back in the day when we were on the NativeScript project, we implemented Slack because that was sort of the hotness of how people wanted to interact. And it was probably a really bad decision because the way we use Slack, we had, I don't know how many thousands of people in there. It could have been 10, could have been more. There's heaps. There's no way we're going to pay, you know, Slack money, $500,000 a year for a Slack license. So we used the free one that sort of purges on whatever schedule it purges. And so the frustrating part was someone would get one-on-one help in Slack, which is the worst kind of help. It doesn't scale. And then that sort of context or that knowledge would disappear in the ether after a period of time. And, you know, I just pine away for the lost hours and knowledge that just disappeared. And if there was something more durable, more people could have been helped with it.
Yeah, there's like that weird line, right? Slack is completely instant and email feels really slow. And it's like, what's in the middle to really kind of facilitate and get a better spot there? I totally forgot what I was going to say, Dan. You had a really great point, and I forgot now.
It'll come back to you as soon as someone else starts talking.
Exactly.
I just put in the chat the old famous Paul Graham's maker schedule versus manager schedule. And I think this should really be required reading for all tech people, whether they're in management or they're, you know, writing code themselves, because this really does a great job explaining how both groups tend to work and why the way they work is incompatible. And now if I know I have a meeting coming up and I need to spend 20 minutes just goofing around because there's no way I can get my head in what the most important things are before this meeting, it all makes sense to me why that is now. And you know, I try to budget blocks of my day for heads down thinking.
I can think of a tip that you made me think of, which is one of my biggest secrets to success the last few years is, with the time that I don't have meetings already set, putting blocks of time on your calendar for your heads down time, even as a manager. Just like this hour, it's on the calendar, no one can overbook me on it. And I found that supremely effective to make sure that I dedicate time. Otherwise, you're constantly in that switching mode. And you're not giving yourself time, so you're doing yourself a disservice.
And Wilson, what's your phrase for that?
The art of defensive calendaring.
Yep.
I like that. Yeah.
It's a skill. I mean, if you don't use it, your calendar owns you, you know, and that's no good.
Although I was thinking too, Dan, with what you said earlier about, you know, like not just, hey, got a minute. So one thing I do think about too with my team a lot is, you know, the other side is like, it's not my job to manage others' time. I do think about that a lot. Is like you said, you have to be defensive of your own schedule. So if you're like, I have these deliverables, I know I have these meetings, you always have to be thinking, okay, cool. Am I setting myself up for success by having this conversation, or, you know, going and pairing or whatever? And it's, sometimes you might think like, oh, I'm not being helpful because I'm not pairing with this person, but you have other things you have to be worried about too. So it's very essential to get that time management aspect down for yourself.
There's another thing too that I think a lot of people that are going from in-office communication using the same tools to remote. So like if you were using Slack in office, pets always show up to this thing. So when you go from in-person Slack to then remote Slack, right? A lot of times people bring the same habits and the same implied or internalized sort of rules of the road with that. And here's what I mean by that, right? So like, let's imagine you're watching TV. You watch a TV, you see the people on the set, and you think that set must be massive. If you actually went to that set, you'd see they're like huddled around the smallest table ever. And they need to do that because that gives the impression when it's projected through the TV of that space. So my suggestion is that you will be surprised at how much you need to over communicate remotely, and it doesn't come off as over communication. It's totally fine, especially if you have some of those asynchronous things worked out in your workplace where you can drop your manager messages like, hey, I'm in today. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm hoping to do. Or, you know, hey, just an update on this, like that kind of stuff. You think you're being so obnoxious. You know, you kind of, sometimes we hate to reach out to people and bother them. But again, if you've set up good rules around that, you really want to over communicate and let people tell you that it's too much because you'll think you're communicating the right amount, but what's really happening is you're disappearing from everybody else's perspective.
And I'll tag on to the end of that too, from the other side. And I just had this happen. My direct manager was out last Thursday and Friday, and Friday afternoon, I thought of something that I needed to put in front of him on Monday. And so I literally put in there FYI for when you're back in the office Monday X, right? But you as the person on the other end of that, where that people are communicating with you, whether it's down from your manager or you going, whichever direction that is, you have to set yourself up to essentially be away, right? I know him and I've got a relationship with him that if I absolutely had to have him, I have his cell phone number. But in Slack, he's ignoring Slack while he's on vacation, and his boss has his cell phone number. So if we need to get the fire dog out, for instance, we can get a hold of him. But he absolutely has said, I am not looking at Slack while I'm out. So because I had that relationship with him, I knew that I could send that on Friday and I wouldn't be interrupting his PTO because he's off of Slack and only going to see it on Monday as I intended.
Yeah, we've got a guy in our team named Christian who's really good about like letting people know what the expectation is for responses, especially if he doesn't want anything immediately. And he's done it a couple times lately where a message will show up and like I'm in the middle of dinner at 7:30, at night, and I'm not really thinking about work right now because it's been 10, 12 hours of it. And he'll write, this is for later. It's not for now. And it just, I wasn't going to answer it anyway because it wasn't critical, but just the relief.
But now you have permission not to answer it.
Yeah, just the expectation that, he's respectful of my off time and trusts me to do my part. It just makes me trust him more and want to do the things that he wants. And I think those little hygiene habits are kind of what you were talking about, Rob, about just being different remotely. If you have problems with your boss, always wondering what you're doing, it's probably because you're not feeding him enough information.
Yeah, and as a somewhat related tip to that, I know one thing I usually tell people when they first start working from home is to not overwork, because I think if you're used to the office setting, you don't think about the fact that there are certain built-in breaks you take just during office work, whether it's just to casually chat with people or running for a break, going with a walk, those sorts of things. And at home, it's a very common tendency to forget about those sort of things, especially since you don't have those other people around. A lot of those typical distractions aren't there. And you can get in a bad habit of just staring at your screen for 8 or even more hours. So I usually encourage people to take breaks, and in fact, take more breaks than you probably think you're supposed to or you need to. Or if there's a time that you are more productive, like I'm more of a morning person, if you're working at home and you have a flexible schedule, well, then just leverage that, right? If you find you're most productive at 7 a.m, well, you might as well work at 7 a.m. You're no longer coupled to some hard schedule, or at least most people aren't when they work from home. So you can leverage those sorts of things. You can wake up early, get some work done. Then you know what? Take an hour off, go for a walk, do some things to clear your head, and then come back. So if you're going to work from home and deal with this, you might as well leverage the best parts of that, or the flexibility that you're offered.
Yeah. On a personal note, I find that before lunch, I'm really good at tasks that I would find very boring in the afternoon. And in the afternoon, I'm much more creative and excitable and happy to talk to people. So it's almost like, I start my day around 7 and this crank starts turning. And by the time 2 or 3 happens, I'm almost, because, hey, I have no socialization in the middle of the pandemic and I'm a super high extrovert. So this really couldn't be worse. The mailman and I, we have a great relationship. We chat all the time. So by stacking the work that I do and the parts of the day that I'm best suited for it, I find I accomplish more than I would just trying to do the wrong thing at the wrong time.
I think something maybe that's coming to mind for me. So I'm coming from the manager angle, but if I kind of flip it back, one thing that I've really appreciated with my team and I've seen with others is keeping an open communication line with your manager. So I'll even be honest with you guys. I recently went to my boss and I was like, hey, listen, I'm not really firing on all cylinders right now. I'm doing okay. I know I could be doing better, but so you guys know, I'm not a work from home guy. I hate it. I'm extroverted. I love being with people. I love working together like that. And, be willing to be transparent about that. If it's something, you can find yourself to be comfortable with, your boss or your manager, whatever, they're supposed to be there to support and set you up for success and not let you dig, yourself into a hole. So, and same thing with your peers. And again, it's all comfort level, but I just can't stress that enough. Don't just keep it all on yourself, on your shoulders, because you lead yourself to burnout and that can hurt. And, with everything that's going on. So I don't know. I can't stress that enough, and having that communication.
I think especially during a pandemic where people have some very unusual situations. I've got 9-year-old twins that are going to start virtual school on Tuesday. So I think my productivity level that day is going to be slightly less than days before that, for example. And there's, just being honest about that sort of thing, because it's not like I'm going to find some magic productivity in the mailbox later today.
No, you won't. It's not there.
So I'm surprised we've gone this long and we haven't mentioned something which to me is so critical with remote work, which is that it has exposed managers that have relied on a very convenient tool, which was sort of the butts in chairs metric. This idea of, I know things are getting done as long as I see butts in chairs, which was never true, right? But it's a decent proxy for that metric. And remote work takes that away. And so if there are any managers out there that are installing those tools that spy on your workers to make sure that they're sitting at their desk or they're paying attention in meetings, if you're sitting there asking people to check in every hour to make sure that they're actually at their desks or take pictures of where they are, like I've heard all sorts of horror stories where people are making people students do to prove that they're paying attention. And you have to get rid of this metric, which means you have to start learning what actually is a productive week.
Mm-hmm.
Find it on a Monday, check it on a Friday, and they're in the middle, but you have to start learning how to actually measure what people are doing instead of just making sure they're there.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think, I used to smoke, and as a smoker, about every hour I'd go outside and have a cig. And I noticed that I'd, outside for 5 minutes, I just solved a problem I was dealing with at the desk that I was just beating my head against the wall. But this change of environments and sort of letting the brain unclench for a second was really the key to it. And, if you had a bad manager, oh, you can't leave your desk. It's like, okay, I'll sit here for 20 more minutes working on this problem when I could do it in 5 if I was, allowed to use my best self on the problem. Now I'm no longer a smoker, but I think it made me stupider in some ways because I don't take forced breaks. I don't have some like internal clock that says go outside now. And I do notice sometimes I'll overly obsess over some issue, but thankfully, because I work from home, if I need to go walk around outside for a few minutes, I can just do it. I don't have to ask anybody permission. My brain doesn't shut off from work. It just sometimes needs a change of pace to think about something a little bit differently. And you should have the freedom to do that, especially as a knowledge worker.
I can think of some kind of tactical as far as something, especially if you're an engineer, if you're an agile and you go through stand-ups. So, right, the general for stand-up is what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, do I have any blockers, which I think kind of encompasses it. But one of the things, so going back to, I think, Dan, you said it, which is if you have an information that's on your back, manager, you're probably not giving them enough information. So one of the things I always push for stand-up updates is add in there, how's the progress going? Are we on track and actually moving towards those things? So it's not a thing of hey, I need to micromanage the work. It's cool as a manager. Now I can figure out, are we going the right path? And if we're not, what can I do to help support that? I find that incredibly, incredibly helpful. And every time we do now, it's cool. Hey, we're kind of slipping here. Can I help with this thing? What do you need? But that one's been an essential kind of adaptation that I put in my stand-ups with my team. And it really helps.
Death to stand-ups. That's what I say. That should be an asynchronous process, period.
Just as a quick time check, we got about 10 more minutes here for chat. So if anybody watching has any questions you'd want to bring up, feel free to chime in. And I don't know, is there any topics or does anybody have any last sort of remote tips that we haven't brought up yet that you think are important?
I have one that I really want to get in, which is,
yes.
I just happened to be reading a thread by Jennifer Kim on Twitter and reading an article on Doist that talks about this. And it's really a great point because you might notice some identity similarities between the panel here. And one of the things that managers really have to watch out for is that with remote work and remote calls, the ability to have that immediate verbal cue, because the delay in internet communications means that people that would ordinarily trod on others in meetings will do it to a greater extent. And people that would otherwise sort of withdraw from meetings will do it to an even larger extent. It's very easy to bowl people over and for people to completely withdraw when they are, for any reason, not comfortable with the situation. This can happen with juniors, it can happen with underrepresented groups, it can happen with women in your team, or it can just be people that just have a softer, a quieter disposition in general. So that's another thing you really have to be watching for as a manager, is to find who's withdrawing or is being bowled over and pull them out on the remote calls, give them the space to say what they need to say. because it gets really frustrating if you just can never get a word in edgewise.
There's like this sort of internal clock I have, and if it goes to like 3 microseconds, I have something to say. And I have a friend of mine who you could probably count to 10 and they're still not ready to talk yet. And sometimes I'm like, just stay quiet. Come on, you can do this a little longer. They're eventually going to say something. And it's really difficult for me to wait 10 full seconds with dead air, but that's how their process works. That's what they need to do their thing. And, you're right. It's very different, especially if you don't have video on, because now I can see that you're nodding your head and I can see DiGangi's thinking and I can see Skaggs is checking his email. No one's ready to go.
It's on the screen over to the right.
So if you don't have video, it's even worse because dead air is the absolute pits. Nobody likes it. It makes people uncomfortable.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and chat too. If you don't have a camera, you don't get those, like if you're in a meeting room, right? Like some of these cues are a little more apparent, or you can see you can like raise your hand and such. And minus that, it can be hard. We've even ran into that on this show where we've had some guests that have, in some cases, been the smartest person on the call, but haven't chimed in. And when we specifically ask them to say something, they have something incredibly insightful to say, but there's just the personality type. Some people aren't as comfortable just jamming themselves in.
And why have 3 people rowing when you can have 4?
Yep. And Devesh, I'm again horrible with names, but front-end dev from India, I'd say over communicating is help from bad situations. Yep, definitely agreed there as well.
Yeah, and honestly, as a dev, it saves your time, because honestly, as a manager, if a client asks me a question and you have previously communicated that answer to me, I can give that answer right away. I don't have to immediately come to you and go, hey, a client needs an answer right now. I need you to stop what you're doing. So it will save you in the long run too.
I remember being at a retro many years ago and someone's like, guys, we're over communicating. It was more in the sense like we shouldn't communicate versus we're doing it. I was just like, that's such a weird thing. Like, which one's way worse, not doing it or doing it too much? And I think it's pretty clear which one's the good way to go.
Yeah. Well, on that point, I should communicate that I think we're coming up towards the end of our time here today. I don't know if that segue was awkward or not, but
no, it's smooth as butter dripping off a hot biscuit.
I'm getting good at this. But one thing we like to do at the end is do basically picks where we all plug something. So Dan Wilson, do you want to kick us off with that?
Sure. I'll mention our Enterprise React newsletter. Our team actually submits all the articles, so it's by developers for developers. If you Google it, you'll find how to sign up. We never spam, never sell your email.
Dan Skaggs, you want to go next?
So I'm going to make a little bit of a plug for an open source project I'm involved with. It's called Lodestone, Lodestone. If you search for that on GitHub, you'll find it. We're looking to kind of kick things off again, looking for some folks that might want to be involved in doing some Angular or some Go work to help move that forward. It's a personal document management, indexing, OCRing type thing that's open source. So it's been a lot of fun to play with, and we're trying to kind of reinvigorate it and get some more folks in to help move that project forward.
Cool. Dan DiGangi, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll keep mine simple. We're hiring at DocuSign. React and C# developers would love to talk. Really cool place to work at, especially if you're looking to, up your game, working on more scaled solutions. A lot of really interesting challenges, for engineering. So definitely come talk to me. Find me on Twitter, whatever the case is, and let's chat.
Yeah, I did notice your stock price was up like 20% yesterday. Congratulations.
It's been interesting. Thank you, Zoom, for the quarterly earnings to bump us up.
And Rob, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'll mention an event that we host at this dot every month called JavaScript Marathon. And so this month in September, that's going to be on the 23rd. It's all day. It's a bunch of different talks on a bunch of different technologies. I actually happen to be presenting this month on React Native. So it's an introduction to React Native, but there's a lot of other really cool talks. And so if you want to look at that or sign up, my cat's super excited. You can do that on javascriptmarathon.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll get the link to that. And speaking of online events, my pick is you might know that Progress, we run an event every year in Sofia, Bulgaria called DevReach. So I've been there a few times. Dan, I know Dan Wilson, you've been there as well. So as you might imagine, not happening in person. So we're actually doing it online, and we're doing it on Twitch. So we're trying to make the best of the online world. So we're doing it completely free, just on Twitch. And one of the days is going to be a React Day. So I will toss that in the chat if you want to check that out. You can sign up, and signing up just because it's free just means we'll just notify you and remind you of when things are coming up. And I think we're giving away shirts and stuff as well. So you might want to check that out. And I'll put JavaScript Marathon in there as well.
Hey, we got a kudos from Carpy Codes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought this was interesting. I definitely learned a few things, even as someone that's done remote work for a while. It's definitely interesting getting a bunch of different perspectives. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Everybody that chimed in. Again, React Wednesdays, we do this every Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern. If you miss any of these, we put them up on YouTube. If you go to telerik.com/reactx-wednesdays, you can find all the recordings and such as well. But thanks, everybody. Thanks all to the various Dans. Thanks, Rob, for joining us today. This is a lot of fun.
All righty.
We'll see y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.